And then let me get my screen up. So, welcome. I found this goofy little PowerPoint presentation that was Groundhog Day. So I went with that. Thanks. So welcome. We are, nearly halfway through with the class, if you can believe it. So welcome. I'm glad to see y'all, and happy Groundhog Day. This is mostly me acknowledging one of my best friends from my childhood who is oddly obsessed with Groundhog Day, loves it, and it's her favorite day of the year. If you celebrate, happy Lunar New Year, and of course it's the start of Black History Month, and so find ways to learn and commemorate that history. And then, first off, let's check in with each other. How are y'all doing? How are you feeling? Is there anything I need to know or anything you want to tell me?
Nothing I can think of. Oh, I actually had a comment / question.
Sure.
We were talking earlier about maybe changing my focus a little bit.
Mhm.
I'm having trouble finding documentation. But I found quite a bit on like mental health services from like the 40s onward.
Okay.
So would it be all right if I went back to that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just maybe I'm thinking of the wrong search terms, or but I was really struggling with finding relevant journals and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I don't mind you pivoting
Okay.
at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Bethany, thanks. You're saying slowly but surely working through the annotated bib. That's great. Just know over the next few days, if I can help in any way, I'm just an email away. Something full disclosure, my husband tested positive for COVID this morning, and we don't live in a place where we can, we don't live in a place where we can necessarily isolate all that much. Thank you, Kyla, and thank you, Jess. But I don't know if I'm gonna get it, and I don't know how I'm gonna feel. We are both vaxxed and boosted, thankfully. Yeah, fingers crossed. I think for him it's just a bad cold so far, and I think we have been dodging this for 2 years, so it was our turn, apparently, or at least his turn, and hopefully I won't get sick, but we'll see. So, if I do get sick or anything like that, if I just feel like I'm, down for the count, I will let y'all know. If that means that, more time is needed on assignments or something, we'll just figure that all out. And please don't forget, I mean, flu season is still running rampant, all of these things. So take care of yourself if you are feeling ill, or if you were just feeling like if I don't slow down, I'm going to make myself sick. Let me know. And then that way we can talk about if you need a couple of days extension on an assignment or just something like that. I really don't want anybody feeling like they have to run themselves ragged. In order to do well in this course, because I'm hoping you do not. So take care of yourself, do what you need to do to stay healthy. Alrighty, so I realized that tonight I may have kind of gotten into some of the topic for tonight last week. And so some of this I was trying to make sure that I wasn't being too terribly repetitive or redundant. And so, but I think it is important. There is a chapter that I referenced last week that I know is in Canvas, that is the book chapter by Jordan Humphrey that is on going to the archives. And interestingly enough, I mean, I think it's a very easy little read. She's writing in a very accessible manner. It's not a very long read. I think that it captures some of her excitement about going to archives, which I think is really cute. And it's one of the only chapters that I've seen on doing archival research, specifically in higher education research context. So, if doing archival research is something that is of interest to you, I would definitely check it out. But if you are a historian, an education historian, or a historian of your field, um, it is likely that you would probably log some amount of hours in some kind of archive over the course of a research project. And, the archival materials that a collection might have can vary in terms of what it is, depending on the topic or the focus or something like that. It could be sketches, it could be pieces of artwork, it could be music, copies of original compositions, whether that be the actual written drafts of a written piece of music or original recordings of it. It could be pictures, it could be newspapers, all of these different things. And so, and then, archives are not just necessarily in libraries, they might be in museums, different organizations like, big companies may have may have an archives with some sort where some of their institutional records are kept. So you don't necessarily have to think of an archive that it should be one way or it's only located in one kind of institution or home. And with these, most higher education institutions have some kind of archive. I think that two things that you're going to run into challenges maybe would be access and organization. So along access lines, I think that as public institutions, for instance, you're really not going to have any trouble actually accessing them, even if you don't have any sort of institutional affiliation. Chances are, I've gone to, say, the University of Texas archives many times, and they will just ask me what my credentials are or things like that. What is it that I want to do, or what am I studying, or something like that. But there really hasn't been any issues with me getting in there necessarily. But sometimes when people will donate papers or something like that to archives, they may restrict either who can see them, or they may embargo access to the records for a certain amount of time. So it could be someone saying, I will donate these papers now, but I don't want them publicly available until after my death, for instance. And so in that case, that's usually noted on the website, and we'll talk about finding aids and stuff like that in a few minutes. But just know, hopefully you shouldn't have issues with it. Yeah, access can sometimes be a little bit tricky. And then organization, I think, just depending on the magnitude or the sheer size of certain collections, the resources of the archive or the institution that you're going into, and just things like staffing, time, demand, whatever. You might get some collections that are really, really well organized. They have finding aids that are really clear and accessible. And then you might find collections that are just hot messes. And so, and you may not know, like they may have boxes of stuff that they have not been able to get a librarian or an archivist to go through them and to actually organize them, or put some sort of organizational schema to them. And so that might be something that they'll say, like, we're not going to let researchers go through these until we've had a chance to go through and organize them, and stuff like that. So just know, sometimes these collections can have variability to them in terms of how useful or well organized they are. The other thing I would say is, I think that if you are interested in community colleges in particular, their archives might be much less resourced and much less well established. They just may not have the infrastructure to be able to invest in really establishing an archive. And especially if they're starting from scratch, it could be something that takes years. So this is something where I think the infrastructure, resources, and just scale of four-year institutions really is an advantage over community colleges, at least within higher education. And so as far as how you go about finding these materials, I have put a screenshot here. I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but on the front page of library websites, you can usually find the special collections or the archives readily available. And so here in the green circle, I put like, here's the Parks Library homepage, special collections, and the university archives is right there. And I know it's the same for the University of Iowa. So, like I said, just go click on those links. That's always a great place to start. And then you can poke around and start looking for finding aids. So essentially a finding aid is almost like an index or some sort of resource that will give you a sense of what is in a specific collection. It could be a list of keywords to specific or to contents or to topics that are talked about. I think the last time I went into an archives, I was specifically looking at the papers of one of the former governors of Texas. And so there would be boxes that would just be labeled education, public policy, re-election campaign, or something like that. So, essentially the way that most archives work is things will be put into boxes. Just think of like banker's boxes, just those sturdy, great for moving cardboard boxes. And then within that, you'll get folders, just plain old like manila folders that help create some sort of organization. Usually the boxes are numbered and then the folders are numbered in some way. Whatever that, however that archive decides to number or organize them is totally up to them. It could look different at every one. And then the finding aid will at least give you some sort of sense of what is in the box. It might be what the keywords are on the folders of how they organize things. It might be organized by date. It could be the kind of materials that are in there and stuff like that. So finding aids, once you can get them, can be really, really great. And so if you want to, for instance, look at what is available to or at Iowa State University, this is what you get when you click on that university archives. And so I'm gonna end show for a minute. Something that I wanted to be able to do was just sort of walk you through it. So here is the Parks homepage. Oh, Zoom. Goodness, hold on one sec. Here we go. Okay, so university and special collections. And then, sorry, I got out of order. So if you go to finding our materials, if you want to get to that screen that I had the screenshot of, you can either come down here and hit Cardinal, or under finding our materials and finding aids. So they've made it really easy to find different finding aids for this. And so I've clicked on that. There's tutorials there, but if I go straight to Cardinal, this is the page that I had the screenshot of on this slide. So essentially here is how you can look at what is available within the Iowa State Archive. So if you have a specific search term, do that. If nothing else, you can look up the different collections. You can look up specific digital materials, subjects, agents, to be honest, I'm not sure what that is. And then collecting areas are usually like what are the different buckets that Iowa State will either solicit material for, or is really interested in, and what are some of their like ongoing maybe focus areas for that. So, for this topic or for this class, you can look at digital materials if you want to, or you can see what is available in the physical archive. So, you can look at if you just want to be able to limit it by year or time period. Again, limit to collections, that would be the physical stuff in the library or the digital materials. So if I looked up earlier, I was just playing around and I was like, okay, let's look up what the university has on Jack Trice. And so this is, a list of hits on Jack Trice and whatever it is that you want to look at. And it can be a really good way to start narrowing down what it is that you want to look for. So let's say Jack Trice papers sounds really good to me. Essentially, this is what a finding aid looks like. So the scope and content will give you just a brief description of what it is, the dates available for what is in the collection, like what is the span of time period. Access restrictions is what will give you any sort of clues to whether or not the collection is restricted in any way. Use and reuse restrictions is going to be if you are trying to reproduce it for something. So if there's some sort of licensing or copyright concerns, then that's who you would talk to, or if there's none, it might say open use or open access. Since we're talking about a person in Jack Trice, there's his biography and profile. The extent here is how big the collection is. So this one, surprisingly enough, is only one document box. I have gone into politicians' boxes that might be, 500, 1,000 boxes. And that can be really, really notable, which is why you'll want to look at the finding aid, because if you go into an archives and say, I want to look at the, Barack Obama papers, they're not going to pull all 1,000 boxes for you. Or they might, but they might not be happy about it. They're going to say, okay, cool. What is it about? What is in the Barack Obama papers or something like that that is of interest? And how can we use the finding aid to narrow that down and to help you find what you're looking for? I think what's really good here is it gives you a sense of the arrangement of the boxes and what you can expect to find in there. Here you go in terms of some copies. If you want to be able to find things that are already digitized, for instance, those are there. The collecting areas will tell you where the archives are, where this box is actually located, so you know where to go. Digital material, I think what's really cool here is you can see that there are some things that the Iowa State Library has that they've already put online and made readily available to you. And then just the repository details, all of those different things. So this is something that if you are looking for a big collection, knowing the things like the boxes, where they're located and stuff like that is going to be really useful information. And I will explain why in a sec. So are there any questions so far? I can take a minute to kind of pause. Okay. Kyla says no questions. All right. If you need me to stop or slow down or re-explain anything, just let me know. All right, so going to the archives in person and what that process looks like. So this is all predicated on the assumption that you have consulted the finding aid and that you have narrowed down the boxes that you're looking for. Some of the things that you need to keep in mind is, one, you're going to have to request access, and this is not something that you can just show up and do. You can't cold call the archive or cold show up, I guess, the archive and expect to be able to see the papers. So what you need to do is, one, check with the archives, check their website to see what sort of hours of operation they have for the reading rooms. Sometimes they may say only be open to the public like half of a day or something like that. Or it'll be by appointment only. And so just be aware of that. And be ready to maybe have some flexibility if you need to. Part of this is about staffing and just making sure that someone is there. But it's not uncommon for archives to not or to have stuff that is stored off site. So maybe they have a special warehouse or something like that that they may need several business days to ask that those be shipped to the library so that you can go through them in the reading room and stuff like that. And so it is something that you probably want to say, like if you want to see a box, you might want to contact that archives like a week or two before. And just to see, sometimes they might be able to get stuff in or make it available to you earlier, depending on what it is and how easily accessible it is. But just make sure that you read the archives website for their policies. And if you have any questions or concerns, reach out to them. And I think I said this last time, please don't ever hesitate to make an archivist or a librarian your best friend. In my experience, they're usually just thrilled that people are using the materials that are in their archives. They are aware that they have a treasure trove of information and of research projects that are just waiting to be found. And they're usually really, really passionate about it. And so make friends with them. Again, know what you're going for. So especially if you're looking at a really big collection, you don't want to waste a lot of time if you don't know what you're looking for. So that finding aid can be a huge clue. And be ready for, I've gone into it where it's like, oh, okay, this one box that says higher education or something like that looks like it's going to be fascinating. And then I go through the box really, really easily because it turns out there's nothing in there related to the topic that I'm studying or something like that. So, sometimes with those, you can get through them really easily and it's not a big deal. Other boxes you might sit with and it might take you a while to get through them. And I say have a strategy if you know you're pressed for time and you're requesting a lot of materials at once. What I mean by that, so when I have gone to 2 different archives, I think the last time I went into an archive was before COVID. It was like the semester before COVID. So about 2.5 years ago, it was at Texas A&M Kingsville, which is in really, really far down South Texas. I was going there for one day. I knew that it was probably going to be a long ass day in the archives. I was requesting a ton of boxes and I knew that I wasn't going to have a ton of time to sit there and actually read what I was looking at. So my strategy was I took my trusty old iPad with me, made sure that it had a full battery and tons of storage room. And essentially, I was just taking pictures of everything that I was looking at and everything that looked relevant, with the understanding that since I probably wasn't going to be able to come back there, I could just take those pictures and be able to analyze them when I was done. So that is one thing, just knowing what kind of time you're going to have, and if you can, budgeting more time than you think you need, at least for the first time you go into an archives, just so you can kind of know what to expect. So what you should bring with you, I think I mentioned this last time, I've yet to see an archive that will allow you to bring a pen into a reading room with you. So a lot of times you will walk into a special collections. Sometimes they may have a designated reading room. Other times it may be just you check into one place, walk through some doors, and then you're in the reading room. The expectation is that you're very, very quiet, very strict library rules, especially if other people are in there. Pencil and paper, it is not uncommon, for instance, for archives to actually ask that you use their own paper. And so they may have paper that is, say, like yellow or blue or something like that, that is stamped with a logo or just stamped with an information. I think essentially what they're doing with that is that they are just, one, making sure that you're not bringing a pen in there. And with the use of their own paper, it's that that you're not taking, especially like um, white paper, that you're not trying to steal materials and like blend it in with your own paper. I know it sounds really weird. It's a pretty common thing. A digital camera or tablet, like I said, I use mine for pictures. With some places you can use, you can take your laptop in there if you want to use it to take notes or whatever. You may need to bring an ID, a driver's license, or your ISU card or things like that, just when you check in. And I always say bring a sweater or a light jacket. It can get cold in there. A lot of times with libraries and special collections, they're specifically keeping the temperature lower than usual, just as a way to sort of preserve the materials that they have. Chances are, if you bring a backpack, a water bottle, or anything else that's not on this list, you're going to be asked to put it in some sort of locker or some sort of cubby or something like that, away from where you are actually doing the research or going through the boxes and stuff like that. So just be aware of that. If it's your first time in an archive, I would say let the person you check in with know that. And don't be afraid to ask questions about decorum. Something that is actually kind of a unwritten but still really important rule of archives is, let's say you have a folder, for instance, like this notebook will be the folder. The expectation is that you are going to keep the folder. You're only going to take one folder out of a box at a time. They may give you like a sleeve or some sort of marker that you can use to hold your place, so you know where the folder goes back into the box in order, so that the finding aid doesn't become just totally unusable because everything that's in the folder is now out of order. So they'll tell you to use one folder at a time. And let's say my hand is the tabletop that you're using. They will say, put the folder down on the table at all times. And you were to only turn one page at a time. And to turn them like this. So there's no picking it up, shuffling like this, getting pages out of order or things like that. They want you to be really delicate as you turn the pages and stuff like that. So just remember, you're working with materials that may be very old, for instance. They don't want them to get damaged. If they're papers that get used a lot, and a lot of different people are looking at them, then that can just have some wear and tear on the artifacts themselves. And so that's one thing when I say like ask questions about decorum, that can be really important. Ask where the bathrooms are, ask where there's vending machines or water fountains or things like that. If you are doing a larger project and you may be in there for a long period of time, then you're going to just naturally have to use the facilities or get up and stretch your legs, or if it's cold, get up and warm up or something like that. So ask that. Make sure you're silencing your phone or your laptop or your tablet or whatever it is that you take in there. Ask if you need any sort of special gloves or equipment. I think I mentioned this last time, but if I didn't, if you were working with really delicate items or things that are that they're really trying hard to preserve, the archive might ask you to wear like these white gloves, these white cloth gloves, so that the oils on your hands don't get on materials and things like that. That's actually really common at bigger library archives. And so if you walk in and you see somebody waiting for their boxes and they have their gloves on, just know, yep, they're looking at something old or something that the archive is really worried about them not destroying, but like breaking down or something like that. And the last thing I'll say is do not be afraid to ask an archivist or a librarian about your topic and see if they have any help or insight. I mean, the librarians are there to organize, to know what the library offers in the special collections. I think especially if you're talking about the institutional history of a particular place. And in that case, they might say, oh, well, I know that there's, say, a Jack Trice box, but you might also look at the papers of the president at the time, or the yearbooks and stuff like that. And those might be things that are housed in different collections that maybe didn't get put in the finding aids of that collection. So there might be other university things where, say, Jack Trice doesn't show up in the finding aid, but there might be something of interest to you, or or I don't know, just something that you could use to get more information, whether it be direct information about what you're studying, or context, or just something like that. So don't be afraid to ask them, and to just say, like, hey, I'm doing a history project. I'm focused on X, Y, and Z. That's what brings me here to look at this collection. I've requested these boxes. You know, is there anything else that I haven't thought of, or that you think would be really helpful for me? So while you're there, what should you do? I mean, essentially, one, you're kind of reading, or at least skimming, to be able to hone in on what you're looking for. With big collections, you might find a lot of stuff that's just not relevant to you. Again, I mentioned, like, being able to go through boxes and sort of fly through them, because even though the keywords maybe said, oh, that this was chock full of higher education materials or something like that, as I went through them, I realized it wasn't particularly relevant to what I was studying. Take pictures. Again, those can be the copies of what you're reading and that you can analyze later. I will say that some archives can be a little bit persnickety about flash. And so when I say, like, ask about decorum, you can also ask, like, is it okay if I take pictures? Is there anything I need to know? Can I use the flash? And then take notes as you're going. I mean, I think that essentially, if you know that you're taking pictures of things, but something stands out to you, you can try to note the things that you're noting, that you're seeing immediately from the documents. You can find a way to try to catalog what it is that you're taking pictures of, maybe what boxes they came from, or what folders they came from, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of multitasking that goes on in terms of trying to keep the boxes and the folders that you're going through, the materials that you're going through, in the organization pattern that the archives likes, being able to look at what it is that you're reading, and if something looks interesting or fruitful to you, and then taking pictures and trying to take notes and all of these things. So it's not boring, or at least I don't think it's boring. If you want to use digital archives, again, you are completely welcome to use digital archives. If you don't feel like, if everything that I said just sounds stressful, or just sounds like a lot of time and energy and whatever, I fully understand. Don't feel like you absolutely 100% have to use those. So on the special collections homepage for the university, I've noted that there's the web archives. You can even probably look at the audio visual materials to see if there's digitized materials there. Same thing with photographs, these oral histories and stuff like that. I mean, don't be afraid to use that web archives link. I did share this link last week, and it was the higher ed history project that is out of George Mason University. Um, if you are interested in studying anything other than Iowa State, especially since I've given all of these examples about Iowa State, if that just doesn't interest you, you want to branch out, you want to learn about something else. What I love about this particular website is, one, they have some primary sources that are already there. If you wanted to try to look through those and build a project around them. They also have links to a lot of institutional library, like, special collections. So let me stop share for goodness gracious. Hold on one sec. It's my browser. Hold on, I should have had this pulled up already. Sorry. Share Google Chrome. Okay. So here's the home page, for instance. There's a lot of different resources. Like I mentioned, you could look at primary sources, secondary sources, but if you also look at this archives link, what they have done is they have given links to all of these different institutional websites and digital collections that you can look up. And they have tons of different institutional types. So, I mean, just from looking at this, you know, they have Alabama A&M. So if you're interested in HBCUs, for instance, they have Amarillo College if you're interested in a community college. So don't be afraid to go through these, like I said, especially if you are feeling like you want to learn about something other than Iowa State. That is totally fine by me as well. I would look forward to learning about other institutions, not just Iowa State. So once you've collected your artifacts, whether those be digital or you have copies of the materials that you got off the website, you know, make sure that you note the collection name, box folders, things like that. I will give you some idea of how you can cite those materials in the final paper and all that as we get a little bit closer to the end of the semester. But you can use the basic document analysis template that I gave you last week as a starting point for starting to make sense of your documents or whatever your artifacts are. So hopefully that, like I said, will just be a starting point of how you can make sense of what it is that you're looking at. So are there any questions? All right, none from Jess. None from Kyla. I'm glad you're excited. Nope, none from Bethany. Okay. So is there any questions, not just about the content I just went through, but about the course or anything for me? Okay, well then in that case, we are done for the evening. Thank you very much for attending and hanging out with me for a little bit. For those of you who are watching this after the fact, obviously, if you're watching this, I will get this put on YouTube ASAP. If you have any questions or anything that I can help with as you are working on part 2 of the annotated bib, please let me know. Or if not, you know, I wish you all good night, good luck. You know, let me know how I can be of service. And also just again, stay healthy.